Okay, hello peoples of the internet, and welcome to your first tutorial in programming games using LWJGL. So let's get started by creating a new Java project. I'm going to call this tutorials. I have just recorded this, but my mic wasn't turned on, so forgive me if I skip through things. Right, so now I've got this Java project set up, we're going to need to do a couple of things so we can get it set up with LWJGL. So first you're going to need to download LWJGL. You could do this by going to Google, just search LWJGL and follow the download links on the site. So then you want to go add external jars, locate your LWJGL folder, open it, and inside it there should be a folder called jar. Now you may not have all of these, and I know some of these aren't like yours, but you're going to want to import LWJGL and LWJGL util. And then you're going to want to click the drop down arrow on LWJGL. I'm trying hard as I can to say LWJGL, it's really difficult. And what this needs is a native library so it can understand the operating system it's working on. So you're going to want to relocate your LWJGL folder. This is the most awkward place to find it. And there should be below the jar folder that we just went into a native folder, Windows. So we're going to want to click OK on that. OK. And now we're all set to start programming. So I'm going to put this in a package structure. I expect you guys to know, to have knowledge of basic Java to understand these tutorials, but you don't need to. You can copy code if that's what you want to do, but I'd recommend that you make sure you actually understand what's going on, because I find when I can actually understand what code does, it means I'm able to influence it for what I want to do a lot better. Right, so here we have our main method. Sorry, our main class. It's early in the morning, I just got up. So now let's create our main method. Right. So this is going to be in our main method here, and we're going to want to put a couple of functions in here. Well, for a starter, this class is going to need to implement runnable, because we want to run this off threads. So I'm going to add the unimplemented method. Is run, that comes by default with a thread. So we're going to want to create a start function and a stop function. Okay, so we're going to want to create a couple of variables here. We're going to want to create a public final int width. It's going to be the width of our window. Public final int height. This should be the height of our window. And public private boolean running, and that's going to tell the program whether we are running, whether to keep running through the game loop, which we'll go into a little bit later. So in our main method we're going to create a new tutorials object. Again, if you have basic knowledge of Java, you should understand all this object-oriented programming. It's very, very useful. You have no idea how much of it you need to know when you're programming games. We'll get more into game theory when we've done learning a lot of graphic stuff from LWJGL. So for start, we're going to want to set this dot running. We want to set the running thing to true, and we're going to want to make a new thread and start it. Right. And equally in the stop method, we just want to set running equal to false. Okay, cool. So when we call the start method for the thread, it's automatically going to call this run method that we declared down here, because this class implements the runnable. So we're going to say while the program is running, you may have noticed I did something there. I pressed Ctrl-Shift-F and it automatically auto-formatted all of my code. It's very, very useful for just cleaning up code after you've written out a ton of it. It cleans it up, makes it easy to read. Okay, so we called t.start, and that's going to go, when we call t.start, it's going to run the thread in that particular object and do this run method. One thing not to get confused with is thinking that we never call the run method, because start actually calls a method in runnable, which then subsequently calls this run method, which is implemented from runnable. So don't fall into that trap of thinking we did that. Right, so currently this isn't going to do anything, so now we need to start using some LWJGL to set up the display. So we're going to create a new function here called initDisplay. So in here, I'm going to call display.setDisplayMode, new display mode, and we're going to want to use these width and height variables that we declared earlier. So width and height, and that's going to set up a window to have those width and height variables we did up there. If you're wondering what button I just pressed, I pressed Ctrl-Shift-O and it automatically imports all of your stuff for you. It's very, very useful. And we're going to need to sign up with a try and catch, because it can throw errors if there's already a display created. So we're going to want to do display.set resizable to false for the moment, because that's going to have issues with OpenGL. We may make it resizable in the future. And display.create finally, so that we actually set up the display. And then above our main game loop here, we're going to call init this.initDisplay. And I know we don't need them, but I like to have the this keywords in front of a lot of things. I think it makes the code look a lot cleaner and nicer. Okay, so now when we run this, we're going to get a window, but you notice we can't drag it around. And if you left it long enough, it would actually come up with the Windows error and say it crashed. There you go. So the reason this is because we're not actually updating the display. So in our while loop, we're going to put display.update. And we're going to create another variable up here. You don't have to make this if you don't want to, but I'm going to. Final int FPS, going to be equal to 60, and this is the FPS we want the window to run at. We're going to call display.sync FPS. This.fps. Excuse me. So now when we run this, I'm going to get a blank window that we can move around, but we can't close. If you're wondering how to close it, by the way, there's a little stop button, like down somewhere in your console. That will terminate it. If you still can't find it, just go into Command Console and no Task Manager and just end the process. So we're going to want to put in a statement, and we're going to say if display.isCloseRequested, and we're going to call the stop function that we made up here. We could set running equal to false, but the issue is if you want multiple things to stop the program and they all call the stop function, what we're able to do here is if we want to do any special code when the program stops, all of the things that stop the program will run that code. So yeah, it's always good to use all the functions that we've made available to ourselves. So if we run this now, we'll have a display and we can close it. So that has been the end of your first tutorial. A brief explanation of this display class. Some of you may notice that all these functions we've called from it are static, and that's because with the default display class, LWJGL only will support one display. We can make multiple displays by applying the OpenGL thing to like canvas, but we'll get into that later because we only want one display for now. And I think that's about it. If there's something you don't get, do feel free to comment in the comment section. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.